Okay, so we'll do 15 and 16 together in one video. For 15, I'll use the formula because that's listed in your formula sheet there. For 16, I'm just going to use the calculator for the population standard deviation. Okay, so just like approximating the mean in one of the earlier problems, I'm going to extend this table a little bit. But first, let me write the formula here. So we have the sample standard deviation is the square root of am I using the shortcut formula? I believe I am using the shortcut formula. N times the sum of the frequencies times the midpoint squared minus the frequencies here minus the sum of the frequency times the midpoint squared over n times n minus 1. Now this is the formula listed on your formula sheet. That's why I'm using this particular one, the computational formula here. Okay, so this is the frequencies column. Now, in order to utilize this formula, the first thing I need to get my values that I'm going to be using, or the ones that I'm going to be entering into the calculator. And that's going to be my XM. And that is the midpoint. Maybe I should reverse that. Put the word in here. Be consistent, right? So I want the midpoint. That's X sub M. So to find the midpoint of the interval, just like the problem before, add the endpoints and divide by 2. So 0 plus 4 is 4. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 9 plus 5 is 14. 14 divided by 2 is 7. 10 plus 14 is 24. 24 divided by 2 is 12. 19 and 15 is 34. 34 divided by 2 is 17. And here we add 44 divided by 2 is 22. That's the midpoint of each of these class limits, these class intervals. Okay, so looking at this formula, I also need the squares of all of those midpoints. I need the midpoint squared. So 2 squared is 4, 7 squared is 49, 12 squared is 144, 17 squared is, what's that, 289, I believe it is. And I forget offhand what 22 squared is. Okay, that makes sense, 484. Okay, so now I need a couple more. So I need the sum of the frequency times the squares of the midpoints, and I also need the sum of the frequency times the midpoints. So I need to multiply these two columns. I also need to multiply these two columns. Probably should have left a little bit more room. Let me erase this a little higher. Okay. So first let's do F times XM. Frequency times the midpoint. Okay? I'll do it on my calculator over here. So we've got 17 times 2, that's 34. 16 times 7, that's 112. 12 times 9, that's 108. Okay, let's put this in. 18 times 17. 306. 17 times 22. And of course, there's more efficient ways to do this, to do that calculation, but I did them separately. 34 plus 112 plus 108 plus 306 plus 374. The sum is 934. This number is going here. That's the sum of the frequency times the midpoint. Frequency times the midpoint squared. So that's here, right? So in effect, yeah, that's here. So I've got 17 times 4. That should be 68. 16 times 49. That's 2384. Let me double check that. Nope. Didn't sound right when I wrote it. It's 784. 12 times 108. See what I did. No, it's not 12. So 16 times 49, 784. Let's make sure. 9 times 144. 1296. 18 times 289. 5202. 17 times 484. 8228. Gotta sum this. 68 plus 784 plus 1296 plus 5202 plus 8228. I believe that's 15578. Okay, let's hope that's right. So sample standard deviation. So n, I need to add up the frequencies also to get n. 17 plus 16 plus 9 plus 18 plus 17, 77. So 77 times this sum times 15578 minus this sum squared, 934 squared, over n times n minus 1, over 77 times n minus 1 times 76. Now I'm going to put this all into my calculator in one step. And then I'll check it against substituting these values in normally. So we've got the square root. I have a numerator, so 77 times 15578 minus 934 squared. Close that numerator, divided by, I'll put that in parentheses too, 77 times 76. Close that parentheses, close the square root parenthesis. So there's my standard deviation, my sample standard deviation, 7.47. I'll round that to 7.5. Oops. All right, so that's approximately 7.5. So let's put this in the calculator here. Let's see how we do that, and then see if we get the same values. So let's clear the lists. Okay, stat, edit. So in this first column, I'm putting my values. In this case, those are the midpoints. 2, 7, 12, 17, 22. Second column, I'm putting my frequencies. I need to tell the calculator how many 2s, how many 7s, how many 12s, how many 17s, how many 22s. Because remember, we're using these values as averages for. So there's 17 values between 0 and 4, but I'm averaging that out to be 2. So 17 2s. 16 between 5 and 7, but let's just call it between 5 and 9, but let's just call it 7, etc. So 17 of those, 16 of those, 9 of those, 18, and 17. Okay, perfect. Values, frequencies. So now I'll go back to stat because I want to calculate something, calculate first variable statistics. But I need to tell the calculator that my data is in L1, see it down here. My frequencies are in L2, see it down here. So second L1, comma, second L2. Then I hit enter. So there's my mean. There's my sum of the x's. I didn't sum that, but I summed the x squareds, 15,578. I did that. Oh yeah, I did sum the x's here. 934. Sample standard deviation, 7.46, which is what we had, 7.5. Population standard deviation, 7.42. And there we go. So, looking at number 16 now. I'm going to do number 16 with the calculator without using the full formula. So I do need the midpoint. That's pretty much all I need here. I need to determine the middle of these intervals so I can use that as my value. So the first one, 0 plus 14 divided by 2. That's 7. The second one, 15 plus 29. That's 44 divided by 2. That's 22. 30 plus 44, that's 74. 74 divided by 2 is 37. 45 and 59, that is 104. 104 divided by 2 is 52. 60 and 74, that's 134. 134 divided by 2 is 62. And there are my midpoints of my intervals. And I was just making sure you're paying attention because 134 divided by 2 is actually 67. Just making sure you're on your P's and Q's there, making sure you're paying attention. Okay, so now let's clear these lists. Second memory, going down to 4, clear all lists. Okay, so I'm doing the same thing I did for the last problem, entering the data in the same way. Go to Stat, Edit, L1, I'm entering my data, 7, 22, 37, 52, 67. Okay, so my values are there. Go over to the next column. Now I'm entering the frequencies. 12, the respective frequencies. 9, 17, 16, 13. Okay, data's in. Stat, calculate one variable statistics. Tell the calculator data's in L1, frequencies are in L2. Sorry about that. So now hit enter. Here's my mean. Sum of the x's, sum of the x squareds. There's my sample standard deviation. And there's my population standard deviation, which is what I'm looking for. So population rounded to 1 decimal place, 20.4. My population standard deviation, 20.4.